my first challenge was, how can we possibly work with this substance? So I was aware there are some psychedelic kind of based churches in the US. Ayahuasca churches are more common. You know how it is sometimes when you're in a river, this dark, crap-filled river, you feel like the turds are in your eyeballs, you can't pull your feet out. The psilocybin helps take you out of the river and put you on the bank. The river doesn't go away, it just doesn't own you anymore. So you can look at it from a fresh perspective and manage it. It's not your burden, it just is.
Basically, it's talking about taking action. You think it, you believe it, it's real. However, you take action, an aligned action, knowing that the thing is going to happen. You don't worry about when or how, you just stay focused on the what and taking action.
Mind-blowing and expanding and fantastic, has nothing but beautiful things to say about it. And then got a very strong message, your journey with the mushrooms is over now. And she developed an allergy to all mushrooms. Isn't that crazy?
Hey Conscious Man 7 family, quick question before we start. Do you love the depth of these conversations but hate when ads break the flow? I get it. Ads can feel like speed bumps on the highway, pulling you out of that deep zone. That's why we created a way for you to enjoy every episode completely ad-free while supporting the show at the same time. For just a few bucks a month on Patreon or Locals, you'll get full access to uninterrupted episodes. You'll also get direct access to me and some cool other perks, and help us keep bringing you the powerful conversations that mainstream platforms won't touch. The link is in the show notes. Join us there and be part of this movement. If you are new to this podcast, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and to share, because that helps us to be recommended in the algorithms. If you would like to support this podcast, please check out our merch store on Amazon with the brand Todd and Me. We've got some cool t-shirts, tank tops, hoodies, and sweaters. Link will be in the description of this podcast. And if you're now starting a spiritual journey, you would like to start a spiritual journey, or you're currently on a spiritual journey and you would like some help removing some fears and traumas, please hit me up on my Instagram at Adriano_246, and it will help you to get some magic mushrooms. Enjoy the show and stay tuned, because we have some more great content coming soon. Hello beautiful and amazing people. Welcome to the Conscious Man 7 podcast. I am your host Todd Cave. And today we're pulling back the curtain on one of the most taboo yet transformational frontiers of healing, psilocybin and the rise of America's first psychedelic church. My guest, Reverend Pam Conboy, isn't your typical healer. She's a biologist, a clinical laboratorian, a nutrition health coach, and now a doctoral student in neuropathic medicine. But beyond the white coat, she's also an ordained minister who co-founded Setas Seminaries, a groundbreaking church where science and spirit collide through the sacrament use of psilocybin mushrooms. In this conversation, you'll hear how Pam went from the lab bench to leading ceremonies that have helped people overcome trauma, addiction, depression, and isolation in ways the conventional system simply can't touch. We'll uncover the rituals, the science, the legal battles, and the stories of transformation that most people never hear. And here's the promise. By the end of this episode, you'll either question everything you've been told about healing, or you'll be inspired to explore a path you never thought possible. Either way, you won't leave unchanged. Buckle up. This is one of those episodes that will stay with you long after you hit pause.
When truth is blurred by lies and misinformation, perception becomes reality. What will you perceive your reality to be?
Liberate your fears and walk with me.
Sit down and meditate. Connect with your soul.
Be a monster and then learn how to control it.
You gotta be willing to do the work.
So it really goes really deep in terms of words and etymology and what they mean. So this is why like it is really hard to really crack the matrix because there's so many levels and layers to it, you know? Pam, welcome to the Conscious Man 7 podcast. I am really excited to talk to you today. How are you today?
I'm doing wonderfully, and I'm so enthusiastic about this conversation, Todd. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. And what really stood out to me when I was looking to reach out to you to come on the show was there were a few words that caught my attention, and it was almost like an oxymoron at the same time having a bit of cognitive dissonance. It was psilocybin, church, reverend. And I was like, these things just can't go together. So I had like a brain freeze at the beginning, and I had to reread what you had written a few times, visit your website, and then I was like, okay, this is quite interesting. And I say, you know what? In my fashion, I'm not going to judge. I'm just going to have a talk with you, an open ear, and see if I learn something and see what's different. Because clearly, being that you come from medicine, you're talking about being a reverend, a church, and psychedelic medicine. I'm like, okay, there's something going on here. So let's dive right into it. So you started your career in medical marketing as a clinical laboratorian. What was the pivotal moment that shifted you towards psilocybin, healing, and founding a church?
That's a big question, and it's probably the most important one. So yes, I came up in conventional medicine. So biology was my undergraduate degree. I worked in a laboratory. I eventually found myself in medical marketing. I didn't even know what marketing was at the beginning of my career, I'll be honest with you. And from that path, I progressed over to more integrative, naturopathic type of medicine, functional kind of medicines, because I was finding that conventional medicine is not all we think it might be. As we were talking about earlier, our form of medicine is fantastic for critical care. It's great for surgeries and accidents and all of those things. But for chronic health care, it's awful. It's really terrible. We do a very bad job. It's embarrassing. So I would say the last 10 years of my life have been in the integrative medical space. And for a while, I worked in a nutritional supplement manufacturer here in Reno. I'm based out of Reno. And I worked with a naturopathic physician at that facility. We became very close friends. I learned a lot about manufacturing nutritional supplements, what quality is, where to source things, how the manufacturing gets done, all of the regulations that go along with that. So come to the church. About 3 years ago, I met up with my friend, my naturopathic partner friend, who is now my partner in this church. And she was describing to me that she had a number of patients that had come to her for advice and guidance on microdosing psilocybin. At that point, she was unfamiliar with the vast amount of research that's happened in the last 15 years. And so she really dug into it and really tried to help identify for people what strains might work best for them, what dosages, and then adding on botanical plants, herbs, and other functional mushrooms to help them achieve whatever their goal was for the microdosing. So whether it was a mood-oriented goal or something about productivity and cognitive ability, or processing trauma, or relieving themselves from addictions and that kind of thing. So how's that going, Leah? Great. Like, this is the best medicine I've ever worked with in my life, kind of great. Why isn't it in the water? Well, maybe it should be. So I kind of dug into what is the status of psilocybin and mushrooms, the legal status here in the United States. And as your listeners may or may not know, it is really in flux right now. There are certain states and municipalities that have decriminalized, but psilocybin-containing mushrooms, along with all of the psychedelics, still sit in a Schedule 1 rating from the FDA. And the FDA says Schedule 1 drugs have no medicinal value, no therapeutic value. And they say it also in Schedule 1, high propensity for addiction. Neither one is true with psilocybin, and we know that very well now because of the research that has been done in the last few decades. In fact, the FDA itself called psilocybin a breakthrough therapy for untreatable depression in 2018 and 2019. That really opened the doors for much more research. Virtually every academic institution in the US has a psychedelic lab. So this is taken very, very, very seriously, and the results are quite stunning. So I'm thinking, I'm an entrepreneur. I've been working for myself most of my life. How can we bring this to people? It's safe, by the way. It's much safer than an SSRI that your regular doctor would recommend for depression. It's a whole lot safer than tobacco or alcohol. It has a very strong safety profile, a very low propensity for addiction. It's really quite interesting, and we can go into the mechanisms. But my first challenge was, how can we possibly work with this substance? So I was aware there are some psychedelic kind of based churches in the US. Ayahuasca churches are more common. There are some other churches that work with other substances like psilocybin or, even other plant-based medicines or entheogens. So I figured it has to be something to do with this church business. So in fact, it is. So in 1993, the federal government passed the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. So this is federal legislation. It is applicable to all of our states. And it essentially says that if you are using these plant-based medicines in sincere spiritual practice, that is protected use. So you're doing it under the protection of religious freedom that we honor here in the United States. The legislation doesn't specify what plant. The legislation does not specify what practice. So I built a church, Todd, and the church is really built on naturopathic medical practices. So whole mind, body, spirit integration. And my partner is a naturopathic physician, so she is deeply steeped in this type of approach to whole wellness. So what we see as our role as reverends is that we want to open up those pathways to people that don't have the understanding or the access. Psilocybin is used as our sacrament. We use this in both microdosing and macrodose ceremony, and we can discuss that in as much detail as you like. But really, the lasting, durable shifts that you can experience with psilocybin comes with integrative practices. And integrative practices depends on you. So for me, I love my hot box. I love the infrared sauna. I like to ground. I like a body scan meditation in the evening to help me sleep. I have my toolbox, but there are a lot of tools. So what we try to do is introduce the tools to members and people who are interested, and then they can adopt these tools to keep them in the shifted space that psilocybin brings them to. So that was kind of a long answer to your question, but I'm happy to dive into all of those aspects.
Sure. And I actually learned a few things because I did not know prior to this conversation, and obviously doing a little bit of research on you, that religious act is sort of like a bit of a loophole. And then also that because when I got into medicine myself in 2019, there were a couple of American lads that started with me, and they all said, "Oh, but we can't get ayahuasca in the States; it's illegal X, Y, Z." So I never actually really why would I look into it to see what was the status and stuff. And then I used to live in the UK for many, many years. So for sure, the UK is uh, I guess the word if you use they have posh mentality where oh, that's beyond us, we wouldn't need to use that. So you would even you forget about even getting anything like that. The closest place maybe would be say Amsterdam that you would fly in, and that would probably even be black market as well, because I think even the cannabis that they get there is very heavily regulated. So in Europe, I mean, they probably are, but it's very, very, very clandestine to access those things. So, it's quite interesting that you are quotation marks reverend and your quotation marks sacrament is mushrooms, So, yeah, this is quite interesting. So, tell us how your path as a spiritual seeker and ordained minister intersected with your scientific training.
So that's another wonderful question. I grew up a Catholic. And if that doesn't put you off of organized religion, I don't know what would. So, I've always had a sort of a jaded eye about religious practices that are man-made and man-interpreted and very much sort of rule-based and oriented on you follow our rules, then we trust you, you're part of our pack. And I always thought that was so absurd because what makes us right as Catholics and the Jews wrong, or the Muslims or the Hindus, that's madness. That's just crazy. So I've always, since a young child, thought there is something bigger, whether you'd like to call it Yahweh or God or Jesus or whatever your name for it is, there is something beyond this place, and we're all connected to it. And there are certain ways of living and relationships that can be developed in introspective work and physical activity like you do. And there are plants that help get us closer to that connection. And we see this all the time with people, even the most skeptical of people, that how the mushrooms work, and I'm happy to go into that, but I know you've talked about this before, so it might be a little bit redundant. But it works with our own physiology to give us access to things that are beyond, Amazon and our daily to-do list. So the short answer to your question is that I've always had a spiritual inclination that things like entheogenic plants can really elucidate the connection that I thought existed anyhow, and that we as humans are not the stewards of these things. Each of us have this inside us, and the medicine or the sacrament or the mushrooms or the psychedelic compound helps you get more clarity to really resonate with the larger spiritual connection. And we have folks that are very Christian in orientation, and they will weave their Christianity into an experience with the mushrooms. This is not everybody because, as we were talking about earlier and what you mentioned about the Brits too, like this is not for us. That sounds dangerous. We don't do drugs kind of thing. Instead of looking at it as an opening, a removal of the veil. But there are people that are still very connected to their religious roots that use these tools to enhance their connection to God. We see it all the time. So understanding the science behind it as well as we can, and knowing what the experience brings to you, it just collides. It is very, very much a synergistic effort. The medicine, the science, the spirituality, the practices, the community.
I am starting to think that spirituality, consciousness, science, and then religion in its original form seem to be actually one and not separated. And it feels like if they were separated on purpose to compartmentalize people into their boxes, because it's interesting to talk to you because as a person that comes from medicine, the medical field, where you're programmed to think in a certain way, and then to have an introduction to medicine and you can see the scientific part is almost like if, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but for me, it's almost like putting myself in the shoes of a person, because I used to be a civil engineer, as like in science, where it's like, okay, this is almost proof of the science in the spiritual realm. Was it something like that for you as well, or am I just putting words in your mouth here?
No, I think you understand exactly. So I have a fairly good understanding of what this compound does in your brain. It's fascinating, and it works with our own systems. So, for example, just to, you know, three things that the mushrooms will do. One is that it grows new brain cells, new connections with a substance called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. This is an intrinsic substance in our own brains, and it was there in abundance as infants. A big burst of it when you're in your, developmental teenage years, and then it wanes over time. But what this does is opens up new pathways of thinking, interpretation, understanding, conceptualization. That's what it does. So that's one big piece. And that's it really helps people break free of these habituated issues with like post-traumatic stress. So traumas that we get stuck in these loops in our brain. Our brains are really habitual. They use up a lot of energy and they always want to take a shortcut. So wherever there's a well-trodden road, it goes there. But the BDNF flooding helps make new connections where you can start to travel in a different path in your brain and look at things from a completely different perspective. So that's one thing. Another thing is that it reduces inflammation in your brain. All mental health issues and all neurocognitive disease have a inflammatory component, and this actively reduces neuronal inflammation. And the last thing, well, there are other things, but the top three, the last one is it balances neurotransmitters. So like SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors like Prozac, it acts on the serotonergic system, but instead of blocking reuptake, it actually activates those neurons. So you're making more serotonin innately, and that is our really calming neurotransmitter, kind of puts us in a calm, even-keeled place. It also acts on dopamine, so reward transmitter, right? So this explains a lot about how people can break lifelong habituations to things like alcohol with a single macro journey of psilocybin. It's pretty astonishing. It also works on glutamate. So glutamate is an activating neurotransmitter, and it gives us more energy and more creativity, and it also drives that BDNF production. So all of the things that are happening to you, you get a whole cocktail of stuff happening in your brain, and it all makes sense. It's almost like starting over, right? I have this old problem, but I can attack it now from a new way. So, that makes sense to me, why it's successful in treatment-resistant depression, anxiety that's unresolved, stress disorders, addictions, and trauma. Trauma is this, you're stuck in a place that you can't get out of. And the mushrooms help break you out of those patterns. So I like to tell people, you know how it is sometimes when you're in a river, this dark, crap-filled river, you feel like the turds are in your eyeballs, you can't pull your feet out. The psilocybin helps take you out of the river and put you on the bank. The river doesn't go away, it just doesn't own you anymore. So you can look at it from a fresh perspective and manage it. It's not your burden. It just is.
No, as you were talking just now, I was just smiling, and you reconfirmed the things that I had known about psilocybin and mushrooms, because I think, when you know something, not that you forget, but it goes like to the back of your mind. And I recently took some mushrooms a couple of weeks ago, 7.2 grams.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, because I tend to have to take large amounts. I could have taken more, to be honest. I probably can take about 10 grams, to be honest with you. Because even when I do ayahuasca, I can take 5 cups. When I do bufo, I can do 0.07 milligrams. And I think it's to do with my physique, because I'm in extremely good shape. My metabolism is extremely high. And since I took the mushrooms, I have literally felt more energized, more energy. I've been working harder, razor sharp focused. And obviously because I take it all the time, but I have breaks. And when you were saying, I was like, this is why I took it, because I came back to the level that I was at a few months ago. So I can attest that everything you are saying, I am actually experiencing right now after a couple of weeks of taking it.
Oh yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's incredible. So why did you choose not just to work with psilocybin morally or medically, but to anchor it within a church context? Because you could have chosen any other context. So why a church context?
So the church context, the biggest reason for the church is because that allows us protected use. So, as we operate as a church, anyone that wants to participate in psilocybin with us, either micro or macro, they have to be a member. Membership costs nothing at all. The idea is that if we're ever questioned, that we are doing this in a sincere way, in a sincere practice, and we are doing it that way. It's more a naturopathic sort of mind-body spirit type of practice instead of a deity-based religion, but that's still sincere spiritual practice. And we do not share this sacrament. So I say sacrament because it's part of the church and it's part of the practice, but we don't share it outside of our membership. So then if anyone else was questioned, they can also say, I use this particular medicine or this particular sacrament as a component of my spiritual practice. And that makes this a more solidified protection for all of us. There are a couple other ways to access psilocybin in the United States. One is through decriminalized states or municipalities. So Oregon and Colorado are the furthest along, but there are others. And many, many states are in the process of at least opening the doors for more research. So there are certain localities that you can access this medicine completely above board within their structure, whatever the particular state has structured for it. Or you could participate in a research project. The DEA kind of approves all of those and structures that as a clinical research project. So you could access mushrooms through that route as well. The only other protected route right now is through this RFRA, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. And to be able to take advantage of that, one must be a religious institution. So that's what kind of led us to the church. We are ordained ministers, but I'll be very honest with you that that didn't take a whole lot. That's available to people. People especially use those kind of avenues to, if they want to perform wedding services and that kind of thing, that you can get an ordination fairly easily. And for us, that particular aspect is more a box checking exercise, that we are doing this sincerely and we're doing it in a way that is very beyond reproach, as much as we possibly can be, because the substance is still Schedule 1. So this is the safest way that we can bring these medicines to people who can really benefit from it. I mean, there's always going to be underground. And you can always actually buy spores. Those aren't illegal. They contain no psilocybin. You can buy spores and grow them yourself. Mushrooms are a little bit finicky. And you do want to make sure everything's clean. There are no other unwanted organisms or heavy metals or, other kind of fungi that are
Humidity.
Yes. So we do, fortunately, we kind of came from this background, right? We know where to get everything tested, how to get it manufactured. So the psilocybin, the microdoses, this is what they look like, and I can detail it, but they're capsules. And they are manufactured in an FDA-approved facility, which that was God intervening, Todd. There should be no way that I can make these products in an FDA facility. It's a long story, but it's the truth. So this is like primo clean quality. We know exactly what's in our microdose pairings. We do them as pairings, which I can discuss if you're interested. But they are optimal and they're consistent and they're standardized, and so it was our intention too. If we're going to do this, it's going to be really good, and they are. the products are very, very, very high quality.
Yeah, I think that's divine intervention because to have an FDA approved lab to how you produce it is like, what are the odds of that, you know?
It
Very,
should
very
have
slim.
been impossible. It
Yeah, it
should have
should be.
been impossible, but it
Yeah.
it 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 not only happened, but it happened here locally. My
Wow.
manufacturer is just a few miles from.
Wow. Awesome. Awesome stuff. So, Setas Seminary is described as bound by soul and science. How do you practically integrate scientific rigor with spiritual ceremony?
Yeah, so that we talked a little bit about this before. My background is in science, and I am a naturopathic medical student presently at my ripe old age. But my partner is a naturopathic physician. She's been in practice for 15 years. And we both have a pretty robust scientific background, and we worked in manufacturing for these types of products. So we had all the right tools that came together. And we were both very much aligned to that this isn't a one and done. We don't want to sell drugs, We don't want to sell mushrooms just to sell mushrooms. We want to give people the tools to use these mushrooms, this sacrament, toward their end goal. And people come to us with lots of goals, but the mushrooms alone isn't going to do it. I mean, it's the instigator, it's the catalyst, it's the enzyme, but all the rest of the stuff is what keeps you on the right track. And the right track could mean different things to different people, but from a base level perspective, the right track is you're connected with yourself, you're connected with humanity, and whatever God might be to you, the higher power, something bigger. And if you do mushrooms, I dare you to walk away from that experience and tell me there isn't anything bigger. I can't believe that would ever happen, honestly. I mean,
I
so
totally agree.
that brings some clarity to it. Todd, I had never even done mushrooms. So my first sort of exploration after reading all of this wonderful research was like, well, I gotta go do some mushrooms, right? So Leah and I went down to Mexico and did a big. So my first experience, it was, and this is divine intervention too. It was perfectly the kind of environment that I would have liked to have had, not too hands-on. There's a lot of freedom for people to journey and what feels good to them, a lot of open space. It was beautiful. My first journey was 5 grams. And you're right. It does it's not like a regular drug that we think of, a classic pharmaceutical where weight means a lot. For psilocybin, weight doesn't mean a lot. It's actually metabolic efficiency that is more important. So if you're very metabolically efficient, then you're going to be potentially more sensitized to it. So it's interesting that you take a big load and you can bring some, you can develop some tolerance. So that probably explains some of the increase for you. But psilocybin itself is what we call a prodrug. So it's not the active ingredient at all. For your body to have these psychedelic experiences. Psilocin, its metabolite is what actually gives us all of those good things and the hallucinations. So if you have really very efficient metabolism and you convert very quickly, you tend to have a bigger experience and maybe not need as much. But the other thing that affects us as humans with this particular medicine is that you control in large part how it works for you. So we see this all the time. We try to prepare people in the proper way to set an intention. What is it? Now I'm just talking macro. What is it you want to take out of this? What are you looking to find out about yourself to kind of get yourself in that headspace? And treat yourself well. You should be doing this anyway, but at least take 2 weeks and try not to drink or smoke or cut down on your caffeine, try to sleep better, get more sunshine, more light, prepare yourself for the information that you're going to get, because you're going to get it. But what we see is, I would say probably 10% of people, even with all of the preparation, the medical screening, the whole thing, and our macro ceremonies are day long here, and we provide the transportation, food. I get a giant teepee that we do ceremony, and it's beautiful. But about 10% of people, I call them the white knucklers. They'll look at you and say, I don't feel anything. Well, maybe you should, cover your, and, this is at maybe 3 grams. It's possible, but that you don't feel anything is a little unusual. And metabolism has something to do with it. And we will boost people a little bit, but usually if they're telling us at 3 grams in a half an hour, they haven't felt anything at all, it's because they're holding on to something. They're afraid, right? They say they want to do it. They may want to do it, but there's something behind that door that I don't really want to look at. And those people, what happens is they tend to think that they haven't had an experience, or maybe the experience they were hoping for. Maybe they were looking for colors and beings and, talking mountains, all of which are possible, by the way. But what happens is, during integration to follow, they will always 100% of the time report, you know what? I haven't wanted to kill my husband in like 2 weeks. That's something, right? Or I haven't really been, drinking a half a bottle of wine every night just to unwind from the day. Or, they're seeing themselves not get triggered. They're seeing themselves sort of relax. They're sleeping better. So then, okay, so let's think of what kind of integration tools are going to work for you. And maybe you microdose after that to help keep the neuroplasticity going. Or maybe later, 6 months from now, the mushrooms will tell you, maybe you want to try it again, and you won't be so fearful and so resistant, because you can block the experience. In large part, it's not quite like ketamine, which is it's an anesthetic, and you dose big on ketamine IV, something's going to happen to you. Mushrooms kind of knock on the door, but you got to open it. Otherwise, they'll just be hanging on the outside, and you're not going to get all the value that you could get from them.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So I'm curious, because you just talked about the integration part. So what does spiritual integration look like in your ceremonies? How does the community participate meaningfully?
Yeah, so the idea behind integration is that once you start to actually experience the shifts that psilocybin create in your brain, all of those lovely things like neuroplasticity, new connections, reduced inflammation, rebalance of the neurotransmitters, you want to be able, especially if you only did a macro and you're not kind of slowly doing micro over time as a whisper, so it's always there in the background. But if you do one macro experience for 2 weeks, you're going to be highly neuroplastic. You're going to be like, wow, this is the coolest thing ever. I feel so different. But your brain is a habitual beast, and you have those entrenched pathways, those entrenched behaviors. And if you don't work on and traveling those new routes, integrating new behaviors and discarding ones that no longer serve you, if you don't keep making progress down that road, then you're going to kind of go back to your old habits. That's just how we work as human beings. So the integration, as we see it, and we don't do this alone, because it's just Leah and I that are running this whole business at this point. But we work with psychedelic assisted therapists that have a whole other toolbox to work with, like integrative family systems, EMDR, various other tools, depending on what you're struggling with, if it's a mental health challenge. We work with other physicians. So maybe you need to get your hormones balanced. Maybe you need to work with a nutritionist to try to get your diet optimized. Or maybe you need a personal trainer like you, Todd, to get your body optimized. Or maybe you just need to meditate. You don't have to go to an ashram. You can do this in 5 minutes every day and make a difference. or go to a yoga studio or have sound healing or energy healing. So we are very intimately involved with all of those kind of providers in our community and beyond to make sure people have the tools they need to integrate. Because my toolbox might not look like your toolbox or Leah's toolbox. She likes the cold plunge. No, that's not, that hurts me. I'll do it under pressure, but yeah, it's not my tool. But I have a cold plunge here, so we offer that for people. So what we do is we have 2 kind of events every month. One is more didactic and one is more experiential. And then we have integration circles that just allow people to kind of talk about their experiences. And Leah leads these integration circles on a different topic each month. So the didactic versus the sort of more practical, for example, say we are talking about meditation. So we would, on the first session, we'd talk about all of the wonderful things that meditation does for you, body, soul, mind, everything. And there's plenty of science to be had. So we really dive into kind of, okay, this is why you should care about meditation. This is what actually happens to your body. And these are the improvements that you will see over time. This is it. This is physiologically what's going to happen to you if you adopt this practice. But you don't have to go away for a weekend or 2 weeks or a silent retreat or an ashram. All of those things are beautiful, but most of us don't have the time or energy or money or whatever. I mean, it's out of reach for a lot of people. So the second of those sessions would be, how do I practically get the benefits of meditation, like in my life right now? So we might do a body scan. Body scans are great to kind of relax and peacefully help you ease into sleep and avoids that sleep latency that a lot of people have. You can meditate while you're walking. Mindfulness is a form of meditation. You can sit outside in the sunshine in the morning with your morning coffee or tea rather than being inside, and that wakes up your whole system, and it's a meditation with nature. So you can do these in very small pieces and still get all of the benefits over time. So that's part of the education, that toolbox, that integration. And some people say meditation is definitely one of my tools. I'm going to use that. And we do the same with, sound healing and yoga and all kinds of varieties of tools that are available to people that you don't have to spend a lot of money or a lot of time. It's just consistency. You want to keep on that path, that beautiful path that you experienced when you came back to your present self after, an experience with psilocybin, like you were saying, right? That all the increased focus and the determination, the creativity, and we want you to stay there. So you don't need to take a big dose of mushrooms every other week. That's not necessary, and it's a little bit interruptive of your life. But if you integrate these tools, you will keep all of those benefits going, and you'll be able to shed the bad habits that got you to the stuck place to begin with.
What you're saying is what I say from the other side. I say to people that if you really want to get into shape, one of the best things to do is to do psychedelics as part of your journey. Because what it's going to do is that it's going to show you the areas of your life that you're self-sabotaging. And by default, to get into shape, you're going to have to change, 1, your mindset, 2, your habits, and 3, your beliefs about yourself. So while on your side, now you're saying, well, you can consider doing fitness to help reinforce the new neurons and the new neural pathways that you're building. And on my side, I'm saying that you can actually aid your development, consistency, and habit creation by doing psychedelics, which now will help foster a lot of the burst through that like mental gap or mental blockage that you have that stops you, that makes you start and stop, or makes you keep eating Cheetos, or makes you self-sabotage and, just procrastinate and not do it, So it really, for me, seems like if we are saying the exact same thing, but from different sides of the fence, and there's this real intersection that in reality is the same thing, but you like chocolate ice cream, I like vanilla ice cream, but we both like ice cream. So this is really what it seems like to me, as it's simply put.
It's absolutely synergistic, and all the parts need to be chugging, right? All of it, everything. Where you get benefit from one side, I started working out again. I'm feeling physically a lot better. You know what? I feel mentally quite a bit better, man. But if I'm stuck on the couch with the Cheetos, I got to unblock my mind before I can get to that place where my body's engaged with all of these beautiful changes. And in fact, the research is relatively young, but there's been some really encouraging research about flow state, so athletic flow and recovery and psilocybin and longevity. So there are things that these mushrooms do that we probably haven't teased apart entirely. So I always say those three big things because those are the big things, but there's all sorts of other things going on with the mushrooms. They're nature, right? And they connect everything. The trees talk to each other through the mycelial network of mushrooms. They're a magical little beast. And they really support the gut-brain axis. As an athlete, I'm sure you're aware of all what's going on in your gut microbiome. Most of your serotonin is made there. Most of your immune system is there. And most of the talk, the constant talk between your brain and your gut, most of it comes from your gut. All of those bacteria, all the friendly bacteria, right? So the mushrooms, the fibrous parts of the mushrooms really support that whole network of gut microbiota that keep our whole systems running. So yeah, it's a really complex kind of thing, and physical and mental have to work in harmony, and they can with these practices.
Absolutely, absolutely. So your ceremony flow includes fasting, intention setting, and musical unification. How do these ritual elements support the sacred psilocybin experience?
So, as I was mentioning before, we try to help people prepare for the experience. So, the fast, we do, it's not like dieta with the ayahuasca. So, it's not quite that strict. And we don't wish to completely disrupt people's lives. What we want them to do is to make better choices. Try to honor yourself in this particular ceremony. Now, again, I'm talking macro dose, but we encourage this for doing micro dosing as well, to eat better, to, ditch the Cheetos, to try not to drink as much, even small increments where if you need to, if you're so entrenched in your habits and you're having a real struggle getting rid of them all in a short period of time, set goals on how you can kind of clean your system and prepare your mind to have this experience. Because we don't want you to be a white knuckler. We want you to dive deep and really have a beautiful, amazing, potentially life-shifting experience. And we see this all the time. It happens all the time. It's not theory. So we really drink more water, sleep more. Here are some herbs that can help you with sleep. Eat better. Try to, if you're a microwave dinner kind of eater, okay, how about you promise yourself to eat an apple every day and maybe something green? I mean, take it in small steps to start to shift toward that person you want to be. So you also get a full medical intake. We give people, this is the book for preparation and journey and integration. It's a beautiful book that people can kind of track their own journey. Journaling is definitely one of the integration tools for sure. And then the experience for a macro here with our church is that we will bring you, I live outside of Reno, about 40 minutes. So Leah lives in town. She'll collect people, bring them up to here, which the church is my property. I have about 13 acres, And I've really set it up for a lovely kind of resort. We have a big teepee, and we do a nice stretching and initial meditation. And there's always some very lovely calming music in the background. We take our sacrament in a tea. It's a really tasty tea. So that usually shocks people, like, this is delicious. I want to take more of this home, right? So it goes down easily. There's no struggle. And then because I have so much property, we encourage people to lean into the experience that you and the mushrooms have decided you're going to have today, because it really is like that. So you can stay in the teepee and very comfortably and put on an eye mask and put in your earbuds. Absolutely, if that's the way you want to do it. And that's how clinical trials are conducted, in that kind of, everybody is consistently in that state. But most of people, honestly, they want out. They want to go sit in the grass or swing on the swings or sit in the hot tub or wander around the property and talk to the mountains and the horses. They sit in a swinging chair underneath a tree. I have a big tree in my yard. And he told me his name was Arthur. So Arthur's the sitting tree. Everybody's attracted to Arthur. People fight over position for being next to Arthur. He's a great sitter. So, and I have, day beds and couches and all kinds of cozy places, because typically once you go into a journey, with very few exceptions, it's a very solo experience. I mean, you're not alone, as you know, right? You're having a very interesting experience, but it's not like a conversation with your neighbor. So we try to provide as much comfort and as many options as possible. Our role is to keep you safe and supported. So we'll make sure you have sunscreen, tissues, always the tissues, blankets, pillows, whatever you might need. We're here to aid you to the bathroom if you need assistance, or find your shoes if you've lost them, because that happens, of course, pretty frequently. And after journey time, so typically 3 to 4 hours, we'll have a big home cooked meal. We kind of start talking about our experiences. Everybody's in a beautiful mood. Some people are more introspective and want to do some journaling, but mostly it's just this beautiful, like, wow, that's so cool. Where do we go from here kind of thing. And that's how we start talking about the importance of integration. So whether it's an integration circle with us, it's adopting, any of the many, many tools, some of which we already discussed. We have the great fortune of having a couple of psychedelic societies close by that have lots and lots of integration circles for different sort of cohorts. So they'll have one for women and one for men and one for parents and one for gay, lesbian, and one for veterans, and one for, first responders. So they really try to make people as comfortable as possible among the like-minded, which I think has a lot of value, especially when you're starting to dig deep into things like trauma, to be able to have someone sitting next to you that knows what you're going through. And then you have the broader based integration circles. And then you have the educational stuff like we offer, and the other wellness practitioners and their beautiful sound baths and floating energy healing. And so it's all out there. The idea, and I, we contact people afterwards, want to make sure they're feeling well. What have you integrated into your life? Have you found some community? Because everyone, after a macro experience, they're bonded. There's, without exception, there is a bonding there already, which really helps toward doing more community experiences or doing things together with a similar goal, is to integrate this beautiful experience I had with the psilocybin mushrooms. Because we have people that have self-isolated for a long time, or are newly isolated because they have so much trauma. And brain, habitual, it's going to go back if you don't stop it. If you don't keep on track with the new stuff and the people that are kind of walking a similar path to you. So all of these pieces are definitely important. We work with medical professionals too. We have this wonderful neurologist, Todd, here in this area. He sends us probably 6 or 7 patients a month, mostly cognitive decline, because there's some really good evidence that psilocybin really helps with that. Some Parkinsonians, some TBIs, traumatic brain injuries. He had the good fortune of doing, I think, a fellowship at Johns Hopkins, so he's very well aware of all the research around psilocybin and other psychedelics for neurocognitive disorders. And he's a beautiful human being. He will kind of lay out, here are your options for treatment. Sometimes they're not, eligible for certain treatments. And for the ones he feels comfortable with recommending psilocybin as an option, he'll just tell them, yeah, well, here is an interesting alternative. My own father, his father is a pharmacist and uses our microdosing. My own father uses this. I know them. I know the quality of the product. Here's the research. If you're interested, here you go. And I made like a little information card for his patients. He actually puts it in the medical records. They referred to Setas Seminary. I'm like, wow, that pulse. That's fabulous. That's fantastic. So we have these great angels that are really aware of what this medicine can do that, our societies are failing to do, that our medical system is failing to do. And it's safe. So why wouldn't you try something safe and natural first?
I really, really like that you spend a lot of time and effort and thought into the integration, because I've been taking medicine for 6.5 years now. And I cannot remember if ever, I mean, I did them all with shamans, so maybe that is why. But I've never had like anyone check up on me to find out how I was doing, or there was nothing afterwards like for integration. No, you would have integration in the sense of after you do the bufo or the peyote or the ayahuasca, where you would talk and stuff like that. But your what you do seems to go further than that, where you actually like check up on people. You give them literature to read and to take away, and you give them advice on what to do. So it's like a complete holistic approach to it, where it's like, okay, if you want to come, we're going to screen you, and this is what we advise you to practice for like nutrition and habits. Then you come in, you take it, then you would have the integration and everything afterwards, because you have the meal and you talk and stuff, and then afterwards then it's like post integration. And what I have learned in my journey is that the integration period is the absolute most important part of the entire journey, because this is where the actual change takes place. Because I have met people that have done a bunch of medicine, but they're still struggling with the same issues that they had prior to the medicine. And that is because they're not taking action. Because it's similar to like what Napoleon Hill talks about in his book, Think and Grow Rich. He talks about faith in works, or work in faith, something like that. But basically, it's talking about taking action. You think it, you believe it, it's real. However, you take action, and aligned action, knowing that the thing is going to happen. You don't worry about when or how. You just stay focused on the what and taking action. And I find that that's really important, because you get shown so many things, have such a like lovely experience, sometimes breathtaking experience with the medicine, whichever medicine you use. And then you go away and like, obviously you're thinking different, feeling different. But a lot of people, they just don't make the changes, because you can't have a change in your life unless you actually make a change, right? And it's similar to like, I think it was like Einstein or Nikola Tesla. One of them said that, because I have a bit of a brain freeze here, that you can't use the same line of thinking to overcome a problem. So basically, you can't think the same way to to overcome the problem that you use the same thinking to create or to get involved in. You have to use a higher mind, a different, think differently, basically, right?
And that's what the mushrooms let you do. That's exactly,
Right.
opens the door.
Correct. It opens the door, but then I find that it is the fear part of people that they still hold on to. That is like, they don't confront it and take the action and say, okay, well, I am going to do this differently or do that differently. And that holds them back, which is, I think, with your integration process, I think that people would have a much better chance of having breakthroughs and change in their life with that. Because I mean, look, I've done ceremonies in the jungle and stuff like that. And me personally, Todd, I've had tremendous results because my journey is that I was shown and it was so clear to me that it was like there was no other choice but to change. So even when I tried not to change, things continued to get worse. So I was like backed in a corner and I was like, and the universe was like, all right, Todd, what are you going to do? Change or not?
Right.
And I was like,
you know what to do.
I'm just going
to
to change. So maybe the thing is that I would suggest to people you don't have to take the road I took because it's a hard one. But if you can do it by yourself or in a ceremony, the things that you're shown are the things that you need to act on and have confidence and faith in yourself that by making those changes, you will actually have change in your life. So you had previously spoken about, psilocybin's advantages over SSRIs and its role in neuroplasticity. So can you dive in a little bit into those mechanisms and the differences and the nuance between those two?
I can a bit. So, I mean, 2 years or 3 years ago, there was a kind of a landmark paper that really dispelled the idea that depression was, an issue with serotonin in general, which is interesting, and I believe it. I think there's absolutely impact of our various neurotransmitters, but I think when we get stuck, there's something deeper going on, and the role of psilocybin is not just so what SSRIs do basically is it's called the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So when you have your two neurons and then there's a synaptic gap there, and one neuron is releasing serotonin, the other one is sucking it up to propagate. So then you have little guys that kind of take up the extra, right, that you don't need. So the reuptake inhibitors are just blocking that activity. So you have more serotonin sort of flooding that synapse. So it's like a dam almost. It's kind of an unnatural way to approach it. With the psilocybin, it's an actual agonist. So it's making the serotonin, you're producing it as you normally would because it kind of is like a lock and key. So it's acting like serotonin. Psilocin, which is the active metabolite, is actually acting like serotonin. But it's also balancing, the other neurotransmitters that I mentioned in a natural way. So this is not a pharmaceutical issue. And with SSRIs, there are all kinds of complication side effects. Weight gain, loss of sexual interest, suicidal ideation. There are black box warnings on some of these SSRIs. They were never intended to be lifetime medications. Really, they were intended to sort of as a short-term support of someone that's struggling very deeply with depression. But it takes like 2 weeks for it to even come on board. Although they're both serotonergic in nature, the mushrooms really act from a native perspective, right? It's a plant being that's working with your body to rejigger things. So, get yourself unstuck, making these neural pathways, and you need to exercise those neural pathways, integration, whatever those tools are, for them to stay the ones that are your go-to. because you've had years probably of going down the do loop of whatever you're tormented by, right? Or just the Cheeto behavior and those addictive behaviors and that kind of thing. So psilocybin addresses sort of all of these things at a very, very root cause. SSRIs does none of that. They really were kind of a pharmaceutical Band-Aid and have been bastardized into these really, really long-term treatment plans where you have no therapy. People are parked on these things for decades. They have all of the side effects. They maybe aren't as depressed as they used to be, but they also don't care about anything else. So you have this, unwanted side effect of apathy. I might not be hurting so much anymore, but I just don't care about anything. So I'll get fat and, kind of just go on with my life. At least I'm not depressed. But that's not a fix. Psilocybin can open the door to actually you fixing yourself. You still have to put the work in, just like you were saying. But this really, it is a tool for a very lot of people that can really instigate really meaningful, durable shifts. You just have to participate to make it stick. There's none of that with an SSRI. There's none of that. There's no goal like that. So our pharmaceutical system it's just off in all kinds of ways, especially in the mental health category. But that's also true with, a lot of the medications for any chronic disease. They're not getting to root cause at all. They're not fixing the broken thing. They're just getting rid of symptoms. And then you take another medication to get rid of another side effect. There's a symptom of this one. So you're on, 23 medications by the time you're 50. It's insane. Natural medicines can actually help get to root cause, and healthful practices, the toolbox, the integration will keep you there. So it's a whole different philosophy, motive, action. Everything is different.
For sure. And basically it just confirms what some people know now, because it's not well known to the normies now, that the pharmaceutical industry is basically built on profit, where you are the customer. And, I can't remember if it was ancient Rome that this happened or it was the Greeks, but they used to pay doctors to not have to go to them. So the advice used to be in order to keep well. So they would pay sort of like the doctor fee for the advice from them to not have to see them. And I think that's probably a better model, you know what I mean, than actually what we have now, because their job is to make sure that they don't see you, right? And I guess in terms of, it would give them a lot more freedom to explore modalities that are more in tune with nature, the human body, consciousness, spirituality, sound healing, all these kind of different tools that are available to us that are simply not explored because the system is exploitative, parasitic, and is based solely on profit and not getting to the root causes. So why do you use whole mushrooms instead of isolated psilocybin molecules, and how does that choice affect outcomes and safety?
Oh, that's a brilliant question. So the reason, and I agree with you wholeheartedly about the medical system, by the way, and I don't think it's the practitioners. They're not given the tools, they're not given the opportunity. If you come through conventional medicine, you are in the pharmaceutical world. Naturopaths, functional medicine people, other integrative folks are a little outside that. So if you can afford to do that, because oftentimes it's not covered by insurance, another big problem, those are better people to go to. They don't want to continue to see you. They want to fix you or help you fix yourself. So small molecule versus whole mushroom. So the reason most of the research is done on small molecule is because of the pharmaceutical system and the scientific method, really, right? So in the scientific method, you want to isolate one thing for one condition and try to extricate any other possible influences to see if the one thing works for the other thing, yeah? But there's also the pharmaceutical companies, if they have a good candidate drug, they want to be able to patent it. So to patent it, you can't patent a mushroom. That's not how it works, but you can isolate psilocybin and then put a biomarker on it, something that makes it unique, that's not harmful to a human, but it makes it slightly unique. So a pharma company can say, this is my molecule, and it's my research, because research is very expensive, and that's part of, some of the fault that we're so money driven, because it's not this way in Europe. So the research is done on isolated molecules because of those reasons. Whole mushrooms are what we should be eating, just like whole foods. So you have other flavonoids, you have beta glucans, you have other, all kinds of components that feed the gut-brain axis, that reduce inflammation, that elevate mood and cognitive ability, and, all of these pluses that you get out of a whole mushroom or a whole food. An apple rather than apple juice, a whole different beast, really, isn't it? That's why we use whole mushrooms. I understand why research is done with single molecule, but that's just going to lead into that pathway, right? That medicalization pathway, which I don't think is really the proper way. I think using these kind of very powerful mind-altering substances, it needs support. Definitely support. I'm one of the, and you may be this way too. I'm really a solo flyer. I'll do a big journey maybe once or twice a year, and I do it completely by myself, completely alone, laying out on the grass. This is just my Zen peaceful place.
Same here.
But I do the tools, right? I do the other work, and the things to kind of help keep me on track, because I don't know if it's true of you, but I would say 3-4 months after a big journey, I'm like a new human being. No troubles in the world. Everything's moving. It's cranking on all gears. All pistons are firing. But, life gets in the way. And that kind of you get bogged down in these kind of things, and the tools, whatever your tool bag is, helps keep extending that good place that you're in. And then, the mushrooms, I know this sounds a little weird, but the mushrooms will tell you when it's time to come visit again.
I can concur wholeheartedly, because I know I'm due to go to see ayahuasca soon. And when I took the mushrooms 2.5 weeks ago, 3, 1 or 2, it just said, okay, hey Todd, it's time to come and visit me. And when I took it, it wasn't a very deep trip, but it was afterwards, because I've had several different types of trips where, like, when I first did ayahuasca, I more had purging, but then things started to open. It was like in my dreams and stuff. And it was a similar experience I had with the 7.2 gram trip. I did have a little bit of a travel, but it was literally more afterwards, and the dreams that I was having afterwards, that was like the main part for me. And I just feel so more focused. And I just have a more lease in life. I'm actually working harder. I'm back putting out more content like before, and I just have this new vigor about myself where, like, people may say it is a bit of a cliche, maybe it's all in my mind, but maybe it is, maybe it isn't. What I do know is that every time I do it, this happens. And what you're saying is true, is like every time I do the medicine, for a couple of months afterwards, I have like I start to like peak, and then you gradually come down when life comes in the way, and then you get to a point where it's like, okay, something doesn't feel right, and I need to get back balanced. So I will go and visit the medicine again, and definitely, and I tell people is like, you have to just look out of it as like, you rest at night for the next day. The medicine gives your brain like a bit of a rest for it to reset. And then when it resets, it comes back now with clarity, more vision, and the ideas start coming out, the creativity, you start to see the blind spots you had before, and you're like, oh my goodness, why didn't I see that? So, and that's just life got into the way, and you instead of being stand up straight like that, you crouch a little bit, you're a bit hunched over, and figuratively the medicine like puts you back up, sitting upright in your chair, and you have the 20/20 vision again. So I do concur 100% with what you're saying.
Yeah,
So
we had actually, this is a fun little anecdote because I've only heard it from one person ever. Because we always get the question, how often do I need to do this? Well, it's not really, it doesn't really work that way. You'll tell me when you're ready again. But we did have one person that did not journey with us. She was just a wellness, not just, but is an active wellness practitioner in this area. And she said she did one big mushroom journey one time. It was very mind blowing and expanding and fantastic, has nothing but beautiful things to say about it. And then got a very strong message. Your journey with the mushrooms is over now. And she developed an allergy to all mushrooms. Isn't that crazy?
wow,
Crazy.
that's crazy. Yeah, definitely.
It
Wow.
normally is, that's not the thing, people, but it is it's a relationship. It sounds a little odd, but
Definitely.
you definitely develop a relationship with these mushrooms. They're like a sentient creature. Funguses are very interesting, and we've evolved along with them. I'm sure you know kind of the stoned ape theory. But if you listen, you'll hear exactly what you need to hear from this medicine.
Absolutely. And not only that, it just works out that things shift in the background to align you to have the accessibility or the availability or the money to do it or whatever. It just like aligns and is like, okay, now is the time that you need to come back and see me. In my case, they always speak to me as like a thought. I always tell, like anybody that listens to my show, I always talk with the voice, and the voice always comes in and it tells me, and that's it. And like now, I don't even question the voice. Literally, if I'm like, look, just to give context, like if I'm in my car and I'm like, go back, you forgot to do this, I don't even question anymore. I just get out the car, go and do that thing, come back in the car and move. I don't know what was the reason. I just listen. I've had too many confirmations to know that the voice is always there to protect me and guide me, and I just do. And so far, so good. Touch wood. Everything. Bees. But so the lesson for me is just listen to the voice. And since I've been doing that, you still have your challenges here and there, but you always feel like you're moving in the right direction, and that's the whole important thing, because this is a journey that we're on here, all of us, and it's about getting closer and closer to the destination, wherever and whatever that looks like. So you mentioned never having a bad trip in the church. So what do you attribute that remarkable safety record to?
Well, you can have a difficult journey. I mean, there's always lots of tears, and there are happy tears and sad tears and release tears. We've had good fortune that we really try very hard to prepare people. We want to exclude people who are not clearly ready. So that might be something as straightforward as, I've had psychotic breaks and I'm taking lithium, and lithium and mushrooms don't get along so well. So we would recommend you would, speak with a therapist, maybe try these modalities, try to wean yourself off of lithium. We work with the spirit pharmacist. I don't know if you know who that is, but it's Dr. Ben Malcolm. He's fantastic. He was a psychiatric pharmacist and has really turned all of the psychiatric medications and interactions with things and whatnot. This is his life now. So Spirit Pharmacist is his website. He's a fantastic resource. So if it's a clinical medical problem, we will put it off. We'll try to give people information. We're a nonprofit. So it's not like I want to drive people to come and, donate to the church and make me rich, because believe me, that's not the case. I invested my retirement money to make this thing happen because I believed so much in it. So it's not a profit-making institution. We really want to make sure you're in the right place to be able to get the most of this, and that you're safe, you're physically, mentally well. Most people come struggling with things, but we want to make sure there are no clear contraindications. And we involve people with the church beforehand, right? So they get to meet the people that they're going to journey with. We help them with the integration and explain things, and sometimes explain things to their moms or their kids or their whatnot. We try also to focus on the concept of allowing. So even when you're preparing yourself in your intention setting, basically kind of getting your brain into the neighborhood of this is kind of what I would like to address, you have to allow the process to unfold as the process will unfold, and trust that you're going to get what you need out of that, even if it's slightly different than you thought. So for one example, we had a woman that came to us really quite frightened. A lot of people that have no experience at all, they're a little nervous. Of course, this is, it would be weird if you weren't a little bit nervous, right? Because you're going to go into this altered state. And her intention was really around addictive, habitual type, somewhat destructive behaviors, too much drinking. She was very overweight, all of those things. Trying to understand, okay, how do I control this? Now I would like to improve my health. What she came out of her experience with was she mourned her father for the first time, and had this communion that he was a horseman, and we have horses here in the valley, and she really kind of connected with her father quite literally through the horses, and became a different human being in a day. She, really adjusted her eating without effort. Cut way back on the alcohol, really reconnected back with her own children, where she had been so stressed out at work. She was drinking a half a bottle of tequila and just passing out on the couch. She was going without instruction. We didn't give her instructions. Here's what you must do. Just the check-ins. Oh yeah, I've been walking around the lake with my daughter every night since then. So the concept of, if you're not clearly ready, you shouldn't do it. Not yet. Maybe later. Maybe when things change. You want to be open to it. You need to allow what happens to happen. There's nothing more scary inside of you than you're already facing, actually. You're just going to have a spotlight on it. You're going to be able to see things more clearly, and we'll be there. We're going to be there to support you. If you're like me and leave me the hell alone, don't come near me while I'm on my journey, we'll do that. We'll make sure you're comfortable. If you need to be touched, held, talked to, we'll be there for that. This is your journey. This is your time. It's going to be beautiful. You'll be fine. So that doesn't mean there aren't tears. But we've never had psychotic break. I mean, we tried real hard to screen that out, the people that have the potential for that. We've not had a unbalanced experience. When these bad trips happen, often they are in, a festival or an event, or completely uncontrolled with mixed substances, company that may or may not be journeying. It's just not a relaxed place. Here is a very relaxed place. This is what you come to do here. You're just going to sit with the mushrooms. There's nothing else going on. It's your time. So I think it has a lot to do with very careful preparation and supported intention setting, and just, being there for the person as the person presents, and not trying to force our methods on them.
Okay, that's really good because I think, as we say in Barbados, prevention is better than cure. So I think the screening probably adds a very high degree of reduction, because, like, as a civil engineer, we call it risk mitigation. So you do like a risk assessment, and based on the level of risk, you take certain precautions to mitigate the risk. So that's a word we hear a lot in civil engineering, risk and mitigation. So that's really good to hear. So tell us about your sacrament sourcing, testing, and potency protocols that exceed pharmaceutical standards.
Yes, well, they are the standard of professional nutritional supplements, which is our background. So they're not quite pharmaceutical standards, meaning the quality process is the same, but for pharmaceuticals, they require a high level of clinical trial work. That's not the case with nutritional supplements. They are required to abide by good manufacturing practices and certain testing guidelines and whatnot, but they don't go through the clinical trial kind of process that a pharmaceutical would. So that is a different aspect. But we, because we came from this industry, we both worked in it, we know exactly where to source for high quality. So first off, maybe I should tell you a little bit about this. The way we do our micro is a little bit different, actually probably a lot different than most people. So this jar has the psilocybin. We use a blend of Golden Teacher and Hillbillies. For the folks listening in that might not be aware of those two, they're very gentle and heart-opening and happy. Hillbillies are my favorite. They put, so that's part also actually of No Bad Trip, right? So there are things like penis envy and Jedi mindfuck and real intensive mushrooms strains that they're still psilocybin, but they just have a different characteristic. They're harder. They come on like a hammer. These more are very gentle and uplifting, so they put people generally in a very light, enlightened place. So we use that blend. We have them grown in California to our standards. So we have them, a lot of people that grow mushrooms for mass consumption, they use plastic, and we don't want our mushrooms grown in plastic. They can leach chemicals that we have no interest in being in our products. So everything is grown in inert glass, like pharmaceuticals. That's the cleanest way to do it. And all of the other components are at a very high grade manufacturers that do this for supplement manufacturing. So the way we have this, the pairing set up, 200 milligrams of psilocybin containing mushrooms that you take on a protocol, because microdosing, you always do protocol. The 200 milligrams, for folks who might not know, is kind of midline of microdosing. So some people who want very, very low, they have very high metabolic efficiency, they'll stick to around 50 to 100 milligrams. Other people need almost 500 milligrams to still get in, the benefits, and they're not having any psychedelic effects. So we kind of hit midline for that. Those are grown in California in glass. They are tested in Oregon for everything. Psilocybin, psilocin, because you'll have some conversion from psilocybin to psilocin just over time. So we want to make sure our mushrooms are fresh, that they've been handled and stored properly. We test for heavy metals, any kind of other unwanted boogers, any kind of fungus that can easily grow with mushrooms. We don't want those, aflatoxins and various other things. So these are very well tested. They're very clean. The dosage is the same. They're consistent. The way we do the microdosing and pairings is based on how Leah, my naturopathic partner, was helping her patients initially. So if you're looking to, break out of mood or depression or anxiety, that's a different goal than trying to break out of brain fog and cognitive decline versus trying to address and release trauma. So we have 3 different pairings. This one is called introspection. So this one is the pairing for folks that really want to do some deep soul searching. It's great for trauma processing. And this here is a supplement that you take every single day. These are organically grown botanicals and functional mushrooms, so not mushrooms that contain psilocybin, but each component has scientific evidence to show that it supports things like trauma release and, in this case, some relaxation of tension and anxiety. And they are combined in a synergistic format to help whoever's goal is introspection to balance the psilocybin. So we have 2 others, one called Calm, same 200 milligrams of psilocybin, but your daily supplement is a combination more of adaptogenic herbs and mushrooms. So you're helping address stress, anxiety, sleeplessness. So that Calm pairing really helps reset the nervous system stress point and let you relax and kind of groove without being stressed out. Again, these are all evidence-based botanicals and functional mushrooms. And the third one is called Focus. So as you might imagine, that is more for folks that are looking for cognitive benefits from the microdosing. And those are more nootropic plants and mushrooms that have been shown to help increase memory, recall, learning capability, focus, and productivity. So our pairings are really targeted toward what people are trying to do with the microdosing.
Very, very interesting. So, guys, we can take an extremely short break here just to say, if this conversation is challenging your assumptions or lighting something in you, pause and hit share. Let's open minds and heal into your circle. Also, please follow us on Instagram at Adriano_246 or at the Conscious Man 7 podcast, and look in the show notes for all of Pam's links and your invitation to join the ongoing healing conversation. So, you classify doses as micro, moderate, and full. How do you guide people through those categories, and what does each unlock psychologically?
Yes, so the microdosing is a non-psychedelic experience. So if you're microdosing, you should be able to work, function as well or better than you would without the microdosing. It's doing all of those mechanisms that we talked about early on, kind of in the background. It whispers. So as we discussed earlier, the microdosing is typically between 50 and 500 milligrams per dose per day on a pulsing type of protocol. You don't want to take it every single day because you don't want to build up tolerance. You want it to keep working. You also want time to integrate the shifts and the changes and the growth and the balances in your brain. So I would say, as I mentioned, we kind of targeted midline between 50 and 500 and settled on 200 milligrams of psilocybin for our microdose. I'd say 90 to 95% of people do really well on 200. It's perfect. They're not having any unusual side effects. They're not feeling in any way odd. It's just helping them over time. It's actually usually more energizing, usually sleep better. So there are subtle shifts, but no psychedelic experience. So no altered state of mind. For the folks that want a little bit more, we can provide additional capsules because 2 would be 400. There are very few people that will do 400 on a regular microdose protocol, but a few do. And then there are a few that prefer a lower dose, and they just open the capsule and put half a capsule into tea, and that's how they do their microdose. But our systems, this manufactured kit is with 200 milligrams. So that's microdosing. Anything above 500 usually has some psychedelic effect. I kind of tend to bucket them in two different ways: more non-experiential, so microdosing, I don't have the psychedelic experience, and then experiential. So the kind of gray zone, I would say, is between 500 and 1500, so a half a gram to 1.5 grams. Now, some people will have a psychedelic experience, or they will feel altered at that level, but it's usually in that nowhere land, right? If I took a gram, maybe if you took a gram, Todd, yeah, maybe I feel a little bit off. Maybe I feel like I just had a half a glass of wine or something. There's something there. But some people, very fast metabolizers or whatever else is going on in their physiology, they'll have a full-on journey with a gram and a half. And that not only has to do with your physiology, but also your preparation. If you've been meditating, if you already have access to sort of these higher levels of self or insights that maybe the average person doesn't have, you don't need much of a push. But macro journeys are typically 2 grams or more. The way when we do macro journeys, we try to optimize the dose for the person. But again, it's not based on weight. So what we optimize for is experience. So have you had these experiences before? What doses have you taken? And what was your experience with that? What kind of psychedelic experience did you have? Any medications that might be on board? Preferably people aren't taking a psychiatric medicine, especially an SSRI, because you can have a blunting response. So we really do encourage people, a lot of people want to get off their SSRI and hoping maybe mushrooms could help them. So we'll try to work with them and their provider maybe to taper down a little bit, but they may need a little bit more of the mushrooms to get to a psychedelic place where they can do the work that they want to do. And then, other general health concerns, we're really cautious around cardiac disease. We will often not allow people to do a heavy macro if they have a history of cardiac events. There is some literature that show that can be a risk. Safety is our primary concern. And then you have some folks that are like you, 7.5 grams, no problem. I could do 10. Well, that's not that many people, but we will try to adjust within reason that you'll have a fully supported and a full experience. That's what you're coming for. On average, most of our small group is we take up to 6 people with 3 facilitators typically. So people are very well tended to. On average, we go at about 3 grams. So that is, for most people, 95% plus in our experience, you have a psychedelic event for sure, but you're not off on the planet Uranus. You're not sort of drooling on the grass or something like that. But you're definitely having an altered experience, and it's emotional and cathartic and really enlightening at around the 3 gram mark. If an individual doesn't seem to be getting to a place where we think they should be, meaning on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling as far as, alteration, unaltered state? If you're not at about 3 or 4.5 an hour, we'll offer a little bit of a booster, like a half a gram, to try to push it along. You only have about a window to kind of boost people up, but it is our intention that you have the experience that you'd like to have. Although you have this, 5% or so that hang on. Nope, it's not doing anything for me. Okay. So, you try to kind of get them to go inside, because you're fighting. You're not letting it open, and they're already altered. They say they're not altered, but you can see in their eyes that they're definitely physiologically effective. And those are the people that integration helps a lot with, because they notice the changes over time and are more willing to accept that, oh yeah, it has done something to me. I wish I had the colors or something. So sometimes you have that around 3 grams. Then we will do individual macro journeys. So if you wanted to go on not a hero's dose is more around the 10 grams that you're talking about. And most people, that's really, you're on Uranus. You're not talking really very much. You're not
At
cognizant
all.
of anything around you other than what's going on inside your own skull and spirit. So we will typically do, for people who want to do a more aggressive macro, we'll dose that typically between 5 and 7 grams, and offer a little bit of booster. But usually for most people, 5 to 7 grams, you're going on a hefty journey. I mean, you can still sort of speak your name and talk and recognize things, but there's usually a big hallucinatory component, and you're going on a ride. You're going on a ride. And we do this only one person at a time, and there's at least 2 facilitators. Because again, safety is primary. And if you're gonna have a difficult journey, we want to make sure there's enough support, whether it be medical support, just emotional support. There are tricks and tools and techniques to kind of shake people out if they get into a kind of a weird place. And oftentimes they're very simple things like just moving yourself from one place to another. And if it's a big guy, having 2 people is really handy to help them move out of their stuck. It's quite a literal physical, mental kind of connection. So micro for us is 200 milligrams. Small group macro ceremony is about 3 grams. And then if you want to do an individual higher journey, that's more in the 6-gram scale.
Okay. I definitely, every shaman, every facilitator, they're always shocked that I can take so much medicine. I am one of the anomalies that they all see, and they're all shocked that my body can take it. I don't know why, but it's just that way. Like 5 cups of ayahuasca, like the last time I did it, the shaman was like, Todd, man, like you're a strong guy. I wish I didn't have to take so much. But
you got to get what you want. Where you want to go, and you take the amount that you need. But that is, I'll take 7 grams, but I'm down. That's why I like.
I was comfortable. I was comfortable at 7.2. Like comfortable.
Wow.
Right? So I'm actually gonna use a different strain, the albino strain, because I used the golden teachers.
Yeah, they're very gentle.
Yeah, so I'm going to use the albino, although I did take 7 in the albino, and it only lasted half an hour, the actual intensity. Yeah, even my guy that I work with, he was like, Todd, something's wrong with you. I said, dude, I don't know. It's just my physique, right? Like, I just have this metabolism that it just is strong. That's the only way I can think. But when I'm gone, I'm gone. And I get a lot of clarity after I come back, and things make a lot of sense. I do get that even if I don't have the experience, but I do like to visit other places, because it actually feels kind of like, it almost makes me feel like I'm in a dream, and it's similar to when you're actually sleeping, because now my dreams are like, I know I'm dreaming, I know I'm in my bed, but I'm someplace else. So this is the place where I am at now in my journey, where when I dream now, I know it's a dream, and I know I'm coming back. And when I take the medicine now, whichever one it is, I like to get back to that place, because it very much feels like home, right? And it's not like I nostalgic to stuff, but I do get this real knowing that this is where I belong, this is where I should be. And this is why I work so hard to have conversations like this and put out great content, because like this is what I came here to do, right? So I really, really love the medicine, and I only take the medicine maybe twice a year, really.
Right. Yeah,
So,
that makes sense.
you know,
Complete sense to me. You know, the other thing that kind of popped up in my head is that I saw a picture of you, so I know you're a rock solid muscle dude. Um, but the psilocybin and the breakdown, psilocin, they're both very hydrophilic, right? They love water. They're fat soluble mostly. So maybe it just takes a while to build up in your system because you're so muscle bound, possibly. I mean, it might be a physiological thing given your build. Did you do these kinds of medicines prior to your physical metamorphosis?
no,
No. That'd have been interesting to, know if you had a whole different experience with a different physique. I'm sure it has something to do with it, but those are pretty heavy doses. And I can tell, I know it's not the white knucklers that are, yes, but I do want to go, but no, I don't. I don't want to see, I know that's not the case for you.
you know what is funny now you think about it? In every single ceremony, there was no one that had the physique like me. No one. And typically, talking to people, their experiences are that they don't have people in ceremonies that have my physique. So I don't know if it's because people that tend to be very much into fitness and stuff don't really embrace so much on the physical side. I don't know. But what I do know is that I've done more ceremonies than I can count on my hands and feet. And I've never had anyone ever that was even close to my physique. So I think it has to do with my physique because, I'm pure muscle, right? So, if anyone that's listening to this show that has done medicine and has a physique like me, send me a DM and I'd be interested to have a conversation with you to see if you've had a similar experience with me, or maybe I'm just the Neo in the Matrix where I just need that much.
It's an interesting. I'd really, if you hear from people, I'd be super fascinated to
Yeah,
learn.
yeah. And I'll share what they say of me if anyone reaches out to me, and I'll let you know what they say because it's I just that's the way from the first time I took medicine. I remember when I did ayahuasca the first time, I had 2 cups, and I was like, well, this was like nothing to me. But here, you want to hear something that's the irony?
Yeah.
I have a very, very, very low tolerance for alcohol.
Ah,
Extremely low.
that's a blessing.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why I hardly drink, because it doesn't really agree with my body. Now, I will have a glass of wine here and there, but honestly, the last time I had any sort of alcohol was like 8 weeks ago, right? And that was 1 shot of tequila, and that was it.
It's
So
mostly enzymes with alcohol. So it's enzymes in your liver, and some folks genetically, like I'm Irish. I unfortunately have a very high tolerance for alcohol, and it really kind of is a thing that's passed down genetically. I mean, the indigenous peoples don't have this enzyme that breaks down alcohol. It causes them all kinds of problems. So that's more, I think, enzymatic. But our liver enzymes also break down psilocybin. So but they're a different set of enzymes. So it could be that, it could be your build. Who knows? But that you can tolerate that's a lot. That's a
yeah,
lot.
for sure, for sure. So you've shared some powerful stories of members having healing trauma or addiction and stuff like that. So what's one story that continues to shape your mission?
Oh, you know what my favorite one is? So we have lots of beautiful, lovely stories with microdosing. Microdose whispers again. So you see these great sort of improvements over time, and people really do shift into this more beautiful form of themselves. But one of my favorite stories is a woman that was in her early 50s. um, she was terrified to try this, but had been through a lifetime of sexual abuse through her childhood into adulthood by a family member that nobody admitted to. And apparently it was, sort of the known but unspoken, family secret. And she was torn by, but I thought I loved him. And this person has been abusing me all of this time. And she had developed this beautiful mask of a very outgoing kind of the fun, fun loving, kind of the comic of the family, was drinking an enormous amount of alcohol every day. She had broken relationships with her own children, but really wore this mask, of the friendly person that had it all together and a fun-loving human being. And she came just wanting to make some peace with her past, that was still clearly tormenting her. Again, she was terrified, but, we did the thing that we do with the preparation and the support and, this is going to be fine. And she was one that it was alone. So she was on a higher dose. She was maybe 5 or 6 grams. And she sat under Arthur, my sitting tree, the whole time. Not only did she not fall apart like she thought she would, but she almost didn't move, tears streaming down her face with a big smile at the same time, right? And, as she's starting to come away from this experience, she looks at the two of us and says, who am I now without this burden? Welcome home. Holy shit. That's what we're looking for. And within 2 months, she quit drinking altogether. She called out her abuser and everyone else that knew it or she suspected did, and just kind of swept it under the carpet. Her 2 teenage sons came back to the house to live with her, and she got a job after being unemployed for almost 2 years, within 2 months of this one experience.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So she did microdosing probably for another 6 months after that. And really just started shifting into those healthy patterns, working those tools. And I actually haven't talked to her in several weeks, but we keep in touch because we're really interested in, how are you doing? Things going well, and you should come by and come to one of the classes or whatever, because don't forget that you still have community here, But that was one of the, wow.
Wow, that is an amazing story. And there are a lot of people that have very big preconceived ideas about the medicine. And this is one of the reasons why I love to have these conversations on my platform, because I think that almost every person that listens to my show has a friend or family member that is completely misinformed about the power and the transformation and change that can take place in someone's life when they get access to the medicine under the right circumstances. So anyone that's listening to this show here that has any friends or family that is on the fence, send them this show, because what Pam is sharing with us here is very, very enlightening. And that story will touch, move, and inspire anyone, because, there are other people that have similar stories with that deep level of trauma that need to hear this conversation. So, given early research suggesting psilocybin's potential against neurodegenerative illness and endocrine stabilization, what excites you most about these horizons?
I love your questions. Yeah, so we touched on that just a little bit. But I would say in the last 10 years, we have some very compelling research, clinical research. This is done at, leading academic institutions on things like Alzheimer's, on multiple sclerosis, on traumatic brain injuries, Parkinson's disease. These are all chronic neurodegenerative disorders. And because of the mechanisms of the mushrooms that we talked about, where you're actually growing new neurons, you're growing new connections, new dendrites, new synapses. You're reducing inflammation and, rebalancing all your neurotransmitters, which is usually what you feel first. And I'll explain that in a second. You're actually getting to the root cause of some of these problems. It's not, it's not like psilocybin eats up all the tau proteins or other plaques that build up in your brain. But as I understand it, what you're able to do is kind of get out of those trapped neurons, those sort of encased plaques in your brain, and use different aspects of your brain and the new brain that you're growing. So you can use yourself to repair and renew your cognitive ability. So we have, again, we work with this particular neurologist. That's, a sign from God, the universe, or whatever, that he happens to be here in this area and has the training he has. And we have probably 50 people that have come from him that use microdosing, that have various types of neurocognitive disorders. Vast majority are more Alzheimer's type, but he's been sending more Parkinson's this way. And this is quite the story too, Todd. So he sent one guy, this poor man, I would say mid-40s, healthy guy. He somehow was doing some repair work or something and fell down some concrete steps, severed at C3, became a quadriplegic. I go, in a moment. I so feel for him. And this particular doctor said, hey, I have this patient, blah, blah, blah. He's right now, he's just trying to calm down his nervous system. He's on pain medications and whatnot, but I don't really have anything to treat him. And I've read some interesting early work with TBI, and I told him if he was interested, he should contact you, and he did. He has been microdosing now for probably 6 months, but the really cool part of this story is that, so I think it was maybe 3 or 4 weeks after his injury that he started. He had really no movement. And so this is a 2-month supply, and I think maybe in 3 or 4 weeks, he was able to move his feet. It's so exciting. Oh, I get so excited. I stand on a trampoline when at my desk. So, the doc was like, yeah, I guess it could have happened spontaneously, but this is the only explanation that I have.
That is levels.
Right?
Wow. So, I never even knew that was something that came along from the psilocybin as well, because I've done some reading on it, but that particular thing is quite interesting, because if you think about where they're trying to steer humanity now with like things like Neuralink and certainly chipping your brain and stuff, it may be possible under the right sort of maybe intentions or setting or guidance or even dosage to have that new, because to be fair, the mushrooms do create new neurons and neural pathways, which are what the brain needs in order to function for the body and stuff. It's like the network that the body taps into to function. So in theory, I guess, in a theoretical scenario, you could have regenerative pathways for movement of limbs and stuff. So yeah, that's very exciting that, the frontier is for research is like vast, where just a natural plant can have an effect like that. So that's a really, really cool story.
Isn't it? It really is cool. So, but most of his patients are more on the cognitive decline kind of pathway. And what we see, in our experience, we've been operating in our operation for just over a year, so we're quite new still. But the patients that come from the physician with cognitive decline stay on the microdosing protocol. On average, people will use our protocol for maybe 6 months, then maybe they take a break, or maybe they want to explore macro, or maybe they'll come back to it and try a different one, so it's kind of a little bit all over the place. About 6 months is kind of the program, and then something shifts from what I've seen so far. But the cognitive people stay on it. And the first thing we always hear is that the mood in the household has been enhanced dramatically. The stress, the anxiety, because when you're losing your cognitive faculties, it's very stressful. So that's the first kind of thing that action of rebalancing transmitters really calms down sort of that anxious, tense, angry affect of somebody that's struggling with cognitive decline, and that impacts the whole house. So what I typically will recommend for folks that are trying this modality, and this is true not just for those patients, but anybody that's trying microdosing, is to journal. So I can recommend a journal specific to microdosing, but you don't have to do anything that elaborate unless you like to do that, and that's part of your toolbox. Just keep a little notepad. So you keep a little notepad, wife of Sam, and you and Sam start maybe keeping track of, Sam needs to do these 3 things today, and he only needed a reminder 7 times. And then maybe in a week, he only needs 2 reminders. So you can see the progress, because, when you're right on top of someone and things are changing softly and slowly, sometimes it's hard to really pick up on those shifts. But they will see it. They do see it if they kind of take the effort to track it, but they always see it in the disposition, the changed environment of the household. So that alone keeps them on the program.
Wow. Very, very interesting. And this is something that I tell my clients as well, like when they're working with me, is that observe, like if it takes you, say, for example, if you want to know if you're improving and leveling up, if your goal is to say meditate 3 days in a week and you do 2, okay, good. That's a win because you were doing 0 before.
Yes.
After a couple of weeks, then see if you can get to 3. If you can, cha-ching, that's a win. Celebrate that. So that shows that you're improving, so you can keep records on that as well. So that's very in line with how I coach as well.
Yeah.
So we spoke in the beginning about some of the challenges you had. So operating legally under Religious Freedom Act is groundbreaking. Now, what were the biggest legal and cultural challenges you faced establishing Setas Seminary?
It was surprisingly easy and complex at the same time. So there's actually a bar association of attorneys that specialize in this. So the RFRA type protection, what the limitations are, what the risks are. So I did a lot of heavy risk assessment initially. And all the attorneys that I spoke to, assured me, yes, that this is considered protected use under that federal legislation. Some states can be a little bit more hard-ass, so to speak, and could give you a hard time potentially. But we are a country that is very much respectful of religious freedom. And that's what the legislation was put into place for Indigenous peoples that have been using these medicines for literally thousands and thousands of years. So they wouldn't be harassed because, different leadership, you'd have crackdowns on these people that were using ayahuasca and ceremony and that kind of thing. So I had a pretty good understanding of what my risks would be. Nevada could crack down on me, I suppose, if they wanted to, but they are one of the very, very many states that are working toward not quite legalization, but decriminalization and having these medicines available for research use. And so there's much more open-mindedness now. I knew that I had to be very buttoned up, like take this very seriously. Again, I'm not selling drugs. We are offering a route of wellness that can be extremely powerful, and we're doing it in the safest, most supported method possible. So if you want to put me in jail for that, I will go to jail for that. I feel strongly that it makes a huge difference in people's lives. The one thing that I do that's probably the biggest risk is that I will ship these boxes. I ship them by private carrier, but if you're a member of my church and you want to use non-psychedelic microdosing to help you for your wellness goals, I'm going to get it to you. So, potentially you're shipping across state lines could be a problem, but it's my problem. So again, I'm willing to take that risk. Actually, creating the church itself was an exercise in paperwork and attorney's fees. You can do this. We have the right as Americans to do this. So I have a 501(c)(3). I am a federally recognized church. That was just time, money, and, advice, really, more than anything. Yes, there are some risks. I think we're in a really positive place in the country to look at the broken aspects of our conventional medical system, the power and root cause kind of real cures, shifts that we can get from natural medicines. And if you offer this in a very responsible way, I just can't imagine that I would be persecuted or crucified for doing it. But if you want to do that, okay. All right. We'll just elevate it. Maybe we speed up the process of decriminalization. There have been some, because there are other churches. I don't know all the details. We're the only one that I know of in Nevada. But there are people that operate with ayahuasca here in Nevada and in California for sure. They don't go perhaps as far as building the legal structure. They rely more on the indigenous shamanistic kind of approach. We kind of considered that, but honestly, I believe that mushrooms are here for everybody, and you don't necessarily need a big structured type of ceremony. You just need some support and the ability to be able to engage with these medicines as you feel called to do. So, going a more formal shamanistic route was not really something that I was interested in doing. So the church, the way we have it structured, being this more naturopathic root cause kind of mind, body, spirit unification with the spiritual intelligence, however you perceive that. And you can come with your own established religious convictions. That's perfectly fine. You can come as an atheist. But again, if you're really having an experience with mushrooms and don't believe there's something beyond this, that baffles me. But that's okay. If you're getting benefit out of it, that's okay. If you're just getting physical benefit and the ability to break ties with destructive, addictive behaviors, that's enough. So it was really just a process. And then, of course, sourcing of all of the materials and finding the right people to test with, and the blessing of this manufacturing support that I have that is ultimately it's the best available. I mean, it follows all of the good manufacturing practices that the FDA requires. So time, money, research, passion, luck, spiritual guidance,
Right,
a little
right
bit
place
of
at the right time.
little bit of everything. And, the I think wanting to do it for the right reasons. I'm not, this is a funny thing, Todd. Sometimes I call myself a misanthrope, right? I'm a very introverted. I'm not a real big social person. Hence, I do my journeys alone. But this is quite social type of work, right? And people come with some hesitance, and it's a very high touch kind of operation. And people who know me are like, wow, that's just a real weird choice for you. I said, well, yeah, kind of, except that, if people really embrace this, they're much nicer people. I tend to like them a lot better, right? They're happier in their own skin. They're more connected to the world and the universe and the things beyond it. And they're just better people. This is a great thing. So yeah, I can do social for a while.
So, how do you navigate skepticism from conventional medicine and spirituality communities as a church using psychedelics?
So I don't try to. I will share scientific information with the medical community, and there are some conventional practitioners clearly that are very open to that. We typically kind of educate about this topic in integrative medical conferences. So this is something I have a history, and my partner does as well. We're actually talking at the Integrative Medicine for Mental Health Conference in 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks, in San Diego. We talk a lot about these medicines at the Naturopathic Physicians Conference and some other functional medicine conferences, and as well as wellness practitioners. These people are typically more open to it, may already have a foundational understanding of how these things work, and telling them, or at least kind of giving them one option for safe and supported access to this kind of medicine if their patients are asking for it, if they believe it would be helpful, is a useful tool. But I absolutely never force anything on anyone. There's a lot of religious type of practices that, as we were talking about before, no, it's only this way. You can only do things this way, and drugs are bad, and all those things. Well, that's I'm not here to convert anybody. But on the other hand, about a year ago, I had a young Christian pastor here in Reno that had been kind of in the ministry since teen years, and had a bit of a crisis of faith, maybe in his late 20s, early 30s, and did a journey. And he says, I saw the face of God. I think, I would love to integrate this into Christian followers, because he still holds a Christian faith, that are open to it. It's not going to be for everybody. Again, we're not here to convert anyone.
For sure.
The information is there. You can take what you wish, or just ignore me completely. That's okay. That's fine.
That is fascinating that a religious person would integrate psychedelics into, I guess, his ministry for people that are seeking. I mean, I guess this is my personal opinion. I could be wrong, and I'm happy to be wrong. I think if that happens on a bigger scale, I think religion, the way it is now, will ultimately die the way it is now. And it would go back to probably how it was in the beginning of spirituality, the church being just a place where people come together to share energy healing, Reiki, help people remove fears and traumas, counseling, all that kind of stuff. So I'm very intrigued to hear how that progresses with him, because anyone that listens to my show, my views on religion, I think is the biggest scam that's ever been given, biggest scam and con that's been given to humanity. But I mean, being open-minded to even suggest that shows me that there is probably a shift going on that we may not be able to see, maybe even if it's just on a very, very small level. But as we know, when anyone gets introduced to the medicine, they tell other people, and other people get involved, and then they start to have their own shifts. And this is how we make a change in the world. So I'll be very interested to hear in a few years what what that looks like. I think that'd be quite interesting.
Yeah,
So,
we've talked about having a Christian ceremony. So he would be the lead facilitator. We would support him because neither my partner or I are, we're not friendly with religious practices, maybe like you. But I honor if this gives you peace and strength and you're not harming anybody, have at it. So he would lead. It would be kind of a Jesus maybe experience. I don't know how it's going to pan out, but I'm really open to it because in his experience, he got closer to his God, to Jesus.
fair play to him. Fair play to him. Fair play.
Yeah.
So, what are the ethical responsibilities you feel when guiding spiritual, scientific healing through altered states?
Yeah, it has all of the things that we talked about. So proper preparation, adequate support, freedom and structure balance so people don't, that they feel free to express themselves and explore the things that will come up in journey. We're trained to be facilitators. We're trained to deal with so-called bad trips, but we don't really have them because we try to eliminate that at the beginning. But I agree with you because earlier you said that integration is the big thing. Yes, it is. It's absolutely the big thing. The door and the windows have been opened. You cannot unsee what you saw in your journey, but you must stay on that pathway because we're humans. We tend to go back to old habits. Our brain wants to go back to old ways of thinking. So it's really important for us to be able to both offer ourselves directly and through a larger community the types of tools and relationships that will help people stay on that path in that integrative mindset.
Okay, and how might Setas Seminary's model scale or inspire broader reform in mental health care or spiritual healing?
Yeah, I think it's going to be, we're just one little cog in the wheel. We're one little tool. The big shifts are going to come from, and they're happening now, a lot of research. We have to be cognizant of the unintended consequences of maybe going down a medical model like we talked about before. We also have to be cognizant of the unintended consequences of maybe making things regimented or safe or consistent, but in the process, making the access so expensive that people who really need it and could very much benefit from it will not be able to access it because it's not covered by insurance. They don't have the disposable income to be able to go on such a journey. For example, when I was putting the church together, I didn't know how to price any of, everything that comes through the church is in donation, but I just had no basis. I don't know. I hadn't been selling mushrooms in my past. So I looked to Oregon, who at the time was the one state that was fully decriminalized. And the way they have it structured, it's not a medical model. It's kind of a supervised type of model that is a legalized model, but through their system. So the way they set it up is they have, they're not clinics because it's not a medical model, but you go to a place, like a room, maybe it has a couch, an office of some sort, and then you have a facilitator, not a therapist, but a facilitator, someone that's been trained to, identify risks and be able to get someone help if they have it, and maybe, have some interactive capacity as you would get with facilitation training. But their structure, pricing structure, they were charging, and to my knowledge still are, about $800 for someone to come to one of these facilities to sit on a microdose, no psychedelic effect. There's no need for this at all. And sit there for like 3 hours. This is silly to me, and it's
That's insane.
insanely expensive. And that's just microdose. I mean, how are you going to do that? Go 3 hours like every other day or 3 days a week or whatever, which would be a typical microdose kind of regimen. That made no sense. That's crazy.
Made no sense, no.
So that's just nuts. And then for, a larger scale experience like we offer here for an individual, so higher dose, more upscale, kind of more stuff like we have here with the pool and the cold plunge and the different things. That the range there was like 3,000 to over 7,000, depending on how fancy.
Damn, that's levels.
Who can afford that? I mean, that's just makes it inaccessible to people. So you have these unintended consequences that are stumbling blocks on the pathway to get the medicine to the people. So when you have, conventional docs that really strongly support it to their own potential detriment, right? Because they can't handle Schedule I substances. They can't be seen to dispense them. That's going to put their license at risk. That's true for therapists too, by the way, not just a medical doctor. So we need, this ground upswell from people who understand the benefits and a structure where people can access this medicine, either maybe through insurance. So there's probably going to have to be some medical access for people. We get a lot of homeless people and veterans that are taking their lives, and these medicines are known to help with trauma and a variety of mental health conditions that could potentially be addressed, but they certainly don't have the means to participate themselves. So there'll have to be some kind of supported route. But then you need, things to be relatively reasonably affordable. So for this, I told you $800 for one sit at one dose, one sit. In Oregon, this is 2 months worth, and we request a $200 donation. And that helps us with our operations. It pays for our manufacture. I mean, it's not all being paid for quite yet, but, this just keeps us operational. And then for the small groups, up to 6 people, around 3 grams, but that whole process that I mentioned to you, we request a $500 donation. And we are starting to build a scholarship fund to try to help people who really could use this, but that's a little beyond them. So we'll set up payment plans or, try to offer scholarships if they want it and it's a struggle. For the individual one-offs that, range $3,000 to $7,000 or whatever, in Oregon's model. So we request for that $2,500, but that's on a sliding scale. So we try to make it accessible, but also understanding that to do a ceremony is like 3 days of my time, and then a full day of my partner's time and all the materials, not just the mushrooms, but all the things. So I need to be able to offset my investment in that. So it's tough to get that really down to a low level for an individual at a high dose, at least in the structure that I have right now. But the idea is that this is financially available to most people.
Excellent. That sounds really good. And so what's next for Setas Seminary? And are there any plans for expansion, research collaboration, or deeper scientific validation, anything like that on the horizon?
Yes, and unknown too. So right now I started doing a few validated surveys. So these are surveys that are used in clinical research for depression and anxiety, because I was interested in understanding what sort of the objective shifts are. Now these are, they're self-report surveys, but they are validated. And there's always some, it's people just saying what they felt and how they feel now. But I have been using these, not 100% of the time, but I was finding like these wonderful results, especially with anxiety. It drops like a stone after a big journey. Really amazing. So I've been playing with a little bit on my side. I'm actually putting together right now a case series using one of these pairings just for microdosing for people that haven't had any mushroom experience for at least 6 months, that be willing to do 6 months of microdosing and take surveys a few different times at the outset, a couple of times, and then at the end. So I'm hoping to publish that. I've already published a couple of cases in integrative health journals that have a real, that embrace this kind of thing. So I'm doing it in honestly kind of a half-ass way, but with actual validated tools and sincere intention, because I'm interested in knowing if this is helping are the people that come to us for help. We also are potentially working with VA associated organizations and suicide prevention organizations to try to get these kinds of medicines into the hands of people that could really benefit and it could potentially save their lives. We have the legal issue though, right? But I'm a veteran myself, so I have a real soft spot for our veterans. And the VA hospital is never at the forefront of anything. I worked in the hospitals when I was in the service. The VA hospital is quite backwards in most of their facilities, but they are on the front end of trying to get access to psychedelic medicines because it's showing that it's saving the life of these very deeply traumatized veterans. They're losing, thousands of them every year to suicide. So there are people within the VA system that are very dedicated to the research. Again, talking small molecule, very controlled. That's how they do clinical research. But we're also kind of working on the side with people within those systems that feel comfortable enough to recommend to folks that, hey, maybe you should take a look at this. They're doing these things properly, as properly as they can in the current environment, and it could make a huge difference for you. So we are kind of on the periphery, but very much want to demonstrate that this is a valid approach for health and wellness. It can be done in a very responsible and supported way. As far as expansion goes, so, I kind of run all the operations for this right now with the sister organization that does the manufacturing. So I have 2 companies and then I still work. So expanding is a little, I can't even envision it at the moment. But, with the right people potentially, or, sufficient demand or shift in attitude, there may be a real reason change, to have a different attitude about expansion. I'm not against it at all. It's just not something that I'll be able to do anytime real soon.
Okay, so how do you hope individual and societal narratives around healing shift because of your work?
I don't think it's our work. I think it's the medicine. When people have the experience, the shift happens. They're able to make it durable through small shifts in their own behaviors. They know it to be a wholly wellness supportive endeavor, and everyone around them sees it. It's not what we're doing. We're just a portal, we're just providing access. It's the mushrooms. It's the mushrooms and people's willingness to work through them and with them and keep on their road toward their goal, whether it's being a first-class athlete like yourself or just having a better relationship with your children, or putting down the bottle or whatever it happens to be, or not wanting to hang yourself, once a week. The medicine speaks for itself. It speaks for itself. We just are providing access.
Okay, awesome. And let's get you on this one. If a listener wants to explore sacrament-assisted healing responsibly, where should they start and what should they know first?
Yes, so just visit our website at Setas, or Setas is the Spanish way of saying it. It means mushroom in Spanish. So setasseminary.org. The front end of the website is purposefully a bit vague. You could read between the lines, but the information about various research, other resources, videos, articles, and all the details about our sacramental pairings are in the member portal of the website. So if you visit the website, you're intrigued by what you see on the front end, just hit the Become a Member. It's a little tab up at the top. Costs nothing at all. It'll take you 1 minute to become a member. We'll ask you just a few questions. We want to know if you have experience, if you're on any psychiatric medications, if you have any history of cardiac disease. We ask these questions because if you do have any of those things, we'll definitely want to speak with you, before given the okay to engage with psilocybin. We want to keep everybody safe. You will get an automated reply. You'll get access to enter the back end of the website and go through all the details. And you can, from there, request microdose pairings. If you have any of those kind of little red flags, we'll definitely contact you before we process a shipment. But this is what they would look like. It come right to your door. We generally get those out within 1 or 2 business days, and it ships UPS. If you wanted to do ceremony with us, you'll see on our events page, we have small group ceremony every month. And you can just write a note that says, I'm interested. It's an automatic email that comes to me. We'll have a conversation. Not quite as long as what we had today, which is quite impressive, Todd. But, we'll go through what you're after, what your experience has been, what our process is, and all of that, and get you signed up if you want to participate. If you wanted to go a step further and have a individual ceremony, that's something that we do one-off as our requested. That's, it's much more personalized. So you get all of the services that we offer with small group, but the whole thing, the whole day and everything that's done and all the colors that are used are all geared to you. So it's a little bit more complicated, but the process is essentially the same. So just visit the site. If you'd like to become a member, you'll have access to deeper information at no cost whatsoever. You can sign up for the newsletter. It's just a weekly newsletter that talks about our events, that talks about different research that's coming out, that talks about our various collaborators and whatnot and wherefores. So there are really no barriers to getting more information. It's all available through the site.
And guys, links to Pam and everything that she talked about, her socials, everything will be in the description of this podcast. And Pam, this has been an awesome conversation. Even though I've talked about mushrooms on the show before, this was a completely different type of conversation. I learned a lot, and I really enjoyed talking to you today. And guys, if conversations like this resonate with you, and as I said earlier in this podcast, I am an online fitness trainer. I help spiritually inclined people burn fat and build muscle. So if you would like to start your fitness journey, get into the best shape of your life, work with me one-on-one, and get my coaching directly one-on-one with me, and level up in all areas of your life, mentally, physically, and also spiritually, hit me up on my Instagram at Adriano_246 or my name Todd Cave on Facebook. Send me a DM and let's see if you're a good fit for the Compound Body Training Army. And guys, I also can help you get some magic mushrooms. I can help you to remove some fears and traumas as well. So if you also would like to get some magic mushrooms from me, help support this podcast and all of that stuff, hit me up on my socials at Adriano_246 or my name Todd Cave. And if none of those things interest you, but you would like to support the podcast in some way, you can visit our merch store on Amazon. It is called Todd and Me. We have some cool tank tops, hoodies, shirts, and sweats. Link will be in the description of this podcast. And I have on one of those shirts that you can get in the store today. It is called Truth Isn't Learned, Truth is Realized.
Nice.
So if you would like to grab a shirt like this, link will be to the store in this podcast. And if you do grab a shirt or a hoodie or a sweat or whatever, and take a picture of yourself in it, tag me on Instagram or Facebook, and or send me a photo of you in it, and I will put you on my story and or show you out in the next podcast that I do after I receive it. So guys, this has been an awesome conversation. Pam, thank you very much for sharing your journey, science, and sacred story. If you believe in healing through integration of science and spirit, guys, please like, subscribe, and share this with someone ready for real transformation. And dear listener, please consider supporting us through either Patreon or Locals if you would like to help us with video editing and also spending some time to research guests, because we want to keep bringing on good quality guests. And that does take some time to screen them and make sure that they're a good fit. You can listen to these shows without any ads or anything like that through Patreon or Locals. Link will be to those pages in the description of this podcast. And that helps us to bring more boundary pushing, healing conversations your way straight to this podcast. Pam, thanks very much for being a guest on the Conscious Man 7 podcast. I thoroughly enjoyed this podcast. And I knew that this would be an awesome conversation just by it literally like scrambled my brain for a temporary second where it was church, reverent, science, and psychedelics. I was like, whoa, these words don't go together. So, many thanks for coming on to the show, and you're welcome to come back again. If there are any other things that you're launching, what's not, you're happy to come back here, because I'm very much a believer in medicine, and I will, help those with my platform to help get the message out. If you're doing good work, and you're definitely doing good work, and I think you've got a bit of a niche there in terms of how you're doing stuff. And I think that people that are in the United States, because I do have quite a few listeners in the United States, will be very much intrigued to visit your establishment and to get some healing and stuff like that.
Yeah. It has been beautiful. Really, by far the most interesting conversation I've had in months, and I've had a lot of them. So thank you very much for your interest. Thank you for your passion, and thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. And guys, this has been another episode of the Conscious Man 7 podcast. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and to share, because that helps us to be recommended in the algorithms. And while you're there, please give us a 5-star rating on whatever platform you use. And because that helps us to obviously grow the show and to get recommended for people when they go into those apps to listen to us. Guys, don't forget to keep smiling, keep shining, and keep being the change you want to see. Speak to you soon. Cheers and namaste.